The stars outside the viewport of the transport ship glittered like cold fire. Captain Elias Ward sat in silence watching them, his reflection caught faintly against the glass. He had been summoned across half the galaxy by an order he could not refuse, an invitation that was more command than request. The Galactic Court, the greatest assembly of civilizations ever gathered, had called for him by name. He did not know why. Elias was no stranger to war or politics. He had fought in border conflicts, led rescue missions, and carried out peacekeeping duties for the United Terran Fleet. But never had he stood before the Galactic Court. That honor, or burden, belonged to presidents, admirals, and ambassadors. Not a soldier who had lived most of his life in the shadows of duty. As the ship entered orbit around Ziyara Prime, the jewel world of the alien empire, Elias felt the weight of every rumor that had reached him. The Queen of the Ziyari had died weeks ago. Whispers said her will contained strange instructions. Stranger still, his own name had been spoken in the same breath as the royal family. It made no sense. He had never even met the Queen. When the ship docked, Elias stepped into the grand halls of the orbital station that overlooked Ziyara Prime. The air was perfumed with alien scents, a mixture of floral and metallic tones that pressed against the senses. Rows of guards in silver armor lined the path, their insectoid eyes glimmering under the light. Their weapons were held upright, silent symbols of discipline. He walked calmly, though every instinct in him wanted to question what trap he might be walking into. Humans were still new to the galactic stage. Some alien races welcomed them as allies. Others saw them as intruders, too bold, too stubborn, too unpredictable. And now, for some reason, his presence had been demanded by the highest court in existence. The great doors of the galactic court chamber opened and Elias stepped inside. The chamber was unlike anything he had imagined. It was a vast dome of living crystal, its walls alive with soft colors that shifted as if breathing. Tier upon tier of seats climbed upward in a circle, each occupied by delegates of different alien civilizations. Some were tall and feathered, some scaled and reptilian, others formless, their voices projected through translators. Thousands of eyes, of dozens of kinds, turned toward him. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform, glowing faintly with energy. That was where he was expected to stand. Elias moved forward, his boots echoing on the polished floor. He did not bow. He did not fidget. He stood tall, his expression calm, though inside his mind raced. The herald of the court, a being with a body like flowing glass, announced him. Captain Elias Ward of Humanity, summoned under decree of the late Queen Solara of Ziyara. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some voices clicked in alien tongues, others hissed or rumbled. Many of them sounded like disbelief, even outrage. Elias kept his eyes forward. Whatever game this was, he would not let them see doubt in him. Then, a great hologram flickered to life above the platform. The image of Queen Solara appeared, tall and regal, her crown of silver filigree gleaming. Though Elias had never met her, the power in her voice was undeniable even in recording. People of the court, her hologram said, I leave this final testimony, for my life in this world has ended. My daughter Serenia is my heir. Yet an heir is not enough. She requires guidance, a protector, a teacher of honor. And so I name one. The hologram turned, its gaze settling directly upon Elias. I name Captain Elias Ward of Humanity, the Queen said. Years ago, when shadows threatened our borders, he saved my daughter's life at the cost of his own safety. He showed her courage, patience, and compassion. He became the father she never had. And in my will, I grant him the title, Father, in spirit to the heir of Ziyara. The chamber exploded in noise. Alien voices rose in outrage. Some shouted in disbelief, others laughed bitterly. A few sat in silence, too stunned to react. The words of the Queen echoed above them all, her declaration undeniable, her will sealed by the royal crest that pulsed beside her image. Elias stood unmoving, though his heart pounded in his chest. He had no memory of this moment she spoke of. A child saved years ago in some forgotten war zone? Perhaps it had been just another mission for him, one among many rescues where he had carried civilians to safety. He had never known who that child was. Now he understood. The daughter of the queen, the heir to an empire, and she was calling him father. When the hologram faded, the chamber was left in chaos. A reptilian delegate slammed a clawed hand against his desk. This is madness. A human, an outsider, has no place in the royal line. Another, a feathered ambassador, hissed, "It is a trick. The queen was deceived. Her mind must have been clouded before death." But then, above the noise, a clear, young voice rang out. She was not deceived. The court fell into silence. From a side entrance guarded by armored soldiers stepped Princess Serenia. She was young, graceful, her posture proud, though her eyes carried the sadness of mourning. Her crown gleamed faintly against her dark hair, her silver robes trailing behind her. She walked to the center platform and stood beside Elias without hesitation. Then, in front of the entire court, she looked up at him with steady eyes. "This man," Serenia said, her voice strong, "is the one my mother spoke of. Captain Elias Ward is my father in spirit, and I will not deny it." The silence deepened. Thousands of alien eyes turned toward the human, a mixture of disbelief, shock, and fury. Elias said nothing. He simply placed a hand over his chest and bowed his head once to Serenia. Not to the court, not to the nobles, but to the girl who stood beside him with courage that belied her years. The storm had only begun. But in that moment, Elias understood one thing clearly. Whatever awaited him in this chamber, whatever trials or hatred would follow, he could not abandon her. The queen had trusted him, and now, so did her daughter. The chamber of the Galactic Court remained heavy with silence after Princess Serenia's bold declaration. The young heir stood tall beside Captain Elias Ward, her silver robes catching the glow of the crystal dome above. Every alien delegate watched them, their expressions shifting between disbelief, anger, and curiosity. Elias did not move. His face was calm, though deep inside his thoughts churned like a storm. A queen's final will had bound him to a throne that was not his, to a people who did not want him, and to a girl who had just called him father in front of the galaxy. The herald of the court, the being of flowing glass, raised its crystalline arm. "Order!" it rang out, its voice vibrating like a bell. "The will of Queen Solara is recognized. Debate may now proceed." A storm of voices rose instantly. "This is a violation of our traditions," shouted a scaled delegate from the Drakari Union. His reptilian eyes glowed with fury. "No alien, especially a human, may claim kinship with the Zayari throne." Feathered ambassador leaned forward, feathers bristling. The queen must have been deceived, her mind clouded by grief or illness. Others argued among themselves. Some demanded Elias be dismissed immediately. Others urged patience. Some even whispered that the queen's words carried the force of law and could not be denied. Elias stood silently, letting the storm pass. He had no interest in arguing with politicians, but Serenia, she did not stay silent. "My mother was not deceived," she said, her voice calm but sharp. Her mind was clear until her final breath. She left her words for all to hear, sealed, with her crest beyond tampering. "You may insult me, but do not insult my mother." The chamber hushed again. Elias glanced at Serenia. She was young, not more than 18 by human years, yet there was iron in her voice. She reminded him of cadets he had trained. Uncertain, inside, but unwilling to show weakness before enemies. A tall delegate from the Hydran Collective spoke next, his body shimmering like liquid silver. "If the will is genuine, then the matter cannot be ignored. The queen named this human as father in spirit to her heir. That role carries weight, both symbolic and political." The word political stirred another round of angry voices. Elias could almost feel the waves of hostility directed at him. Finally, the herald struck the floor with its crystal staff. "Let the human speak." Captain Elias Ward, do you accept the responsibility given to you in the Queen's will? The chamber turned silent again, waiting. Elias looked around slowly. Thousands of alien eyes glared down at him. His instincts told him this was a trap. If he accepted, he would invite endless attacks and responsibilities he had never wanted. If he refused, he would dishonor a dying queen's trust and leave Serenia unprotected in a nest of vipers. He thought of the hologram of the queen's words. He remembered missions long ago, carrying children to safety under fire, never asking who they were, just knowing they needed protection. He realized now that one of them had been Serenia. I did not come here seeking titles, Elias said finally, his voice steady. I am a soldier, not a politician. But Queen Solara placed her trust in me. If her daughter needs guidance, then I will not turn away. I accept. Gasps and murmurs rippled across the chamber. Some aliens hissed in outrage. Others stared in shock. Serenia's lips curved in the faintest smile. For the first time since stepping into the chamber, her shoulders seemed to relax. But the storm was far from over. The debate stretched for hours. Delegates hurled accusations and warnings. Some claimed humans were too reckless to be trusted. Others argued the Queen's will had to be respected. A few even hinted that Elias's presence might bring new alliances or dangers to the court. Through it all, Elias said little. He stood firm, his calm presence more powerful than words. Serenia spoke when needed, defending both her mother's will and her own right to rule. At last, the herald raised its staff again. The matter cannot be settled today. According to law, the guardianship of the heir must be tested. Trials will determine the worthiness of Captain Elias Ward to stand beside Princess Serenia. Until then, he will remain under the protection of the court. Trials, Elias thought grimly. He had faced battles, assassins, and hostile worlds, but he had no idea what these alien trials might demand. Serenia leaned close to him as they were escorted out of the chamber. They will test you, Captain, she whispered. They will try to break you, but my mother believed in you, and so do I. Elias gave her a single nod. He did not promise victory. He did not promise survival, but he promised himself that he would not abandon her. Later that night, Elias found himself in a guest chamber carved into the crystal walls of the court complex. It was luxurious compared to the bunks of a military ship, yet he slept lightly, his instincts alert. Outside, alien guards stood watch, not only to protect him but also to ensure he could not slip away. He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the stars through a wide window. His mind replayed the Queen's words again and again. A father, in spirit. He had never been a father. His life had been one of service and sacrifice, always moving, never settling. Yet now, in the eyes of an empire, he was bound to a girl who looked at him with trust he had not earned. For a soldier who had faced death many times, that trust was heavier than any weapon. The next morning, Elias and Serenia walked side by side through the crystalline halls. The princess held her head high, but he could see the tension in her steps. Whispers followed them. Alien courtiers and officials watching, judging, some with open contempt, others with quiet curiosity. At the far end of the hall stood a counselor, an elder Xiari noble with robes of black and silver. His eyes narrowed as Elias approached. Human, the noble said coldly. You should have refused this burden. The throne of Xiara does not need an outsider's shadow cast upon it. Elias met his gaze without flinching. The throne does not belong to me. It belongs to her. He nodded toward Serenia. I only stand where the Queen asked me to stand. The noble's mandibles twitched in displeasure. We shall see if you survive the trials, many before you have failed. Serenia's voice cut like steel. Then let him face them. He has faced worse than your games. The noble sneered but said, no more. Elias felt a flicker of pride. Serenia's courage was no act. She meant every word. That night, as the court prepared the first of the trials, Elias found himself alone on the balcony of his chamber. Serenia joined him quietly, standing beside him as the stars burned above. "My mother trusted you," she said softly. "Not because of politics, but because you saved me when I was a child. I remember your voice even then. You told me not to be afraid." Elias turned to her in surprise. She had remembered what he had forgotten. "I do not know if I can be the father you see," he admitted quietly. "You already are," Serenia replied. Her words struck him deeper than any wound. He stood in silence, watching the stars, knowing that the days ahead would test not only his strength, but his very place in the galaxy. The great chamber of the Galactic Court buzzed with energy as the next session began. The dome of crystal shimmered faintly, casting soft colors across thousands of alien delegates who had gathered once more. Word had spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Every world with a voice in the court wanted to witness the outcome of Queen Solara's strange will. And now all eyes turned toward the raised platform at the center, where Captain Elias Ward stood. His dark uniform contrasted with the radiant, crystal floor, his presence calm and steady even under the weight of countless stares. He had been summoned again, not for trial yet, but for debate. The herald of the court raised its crystalline staff. "The matter of guardianship for the heir continues. Princess Serenia will speak." The great doors opened, and Serenia entered. She walked with grace, though Elias noticed her hands were tense at her sides. The silver crown of her people rested lightly on her brow. Whispers rose through the chamber as she crossed the floor, her eyes fixed on Elias, her steps confident despite the storm of judgment surrounding her. She joined him on the platform. Standing beside him, she lifted her chin and turned to the vast audience. "My mother's words were clear," Serenia began. Her voice was steady, carrying farther than Elias thought possible for someone so young. "She named Captain Elias Ward as my father in spirit, not out of weakness, not out of confusion, but out of truth. I was there. I know." The chamber erupted, in noise. Some scoffed, some shouted. Others argued in languages that echoed strangely through translator systems. But Serenia did not falter. She raised her hand and slowly the voices quieted. "When I was a child, there was war on the border," she continued. "I was in danger. Assassins sought to end my life before I could grow into my place. It was this man," she gestured, toward Elias, "who carried me from fire and darkness. He told me not to fear. He shielded me when I could not protect myself. From that day, I have carried his words in my heart. He is my father, no matter his blood." The declaration struck the chamber like a thunderclap. Delegates leaned forward. Some hissed in anger, others whispered fiercely among themselves. A few, Elias noticed, looked thoughtful. The Drakari delegate slammed a clawed hand on his desk. "This is sentiment, not law. Bloodline cannot be changed by words of affection. No alien may claim to be kin of the throne." A feathered ambassador spread his wings. "This is dangerous. If we allow humans to stand this close to power, who knows what influence they may seize." But Serenia faced them without fear. "This is not about blood," she said firmly. "It is about trust. My mother trusted him. I trust him. Without him, I would not be alive, and I will not let the court take him from me." Her words silenced the chamber once more. Elias studied her quietly. He could see the strain behind her courage, the weight pressing down on her shoulders. Yet she stood tall, more queenly than many who had worn crowns for decades. He stepped forward then, speaking for the first time. "I did not ask for this role. I never sought it. But the queen gave it and the princess accepts it. I will not betray that trust." His words were simple, but they carried power. The chamber rippled again with reactions: anger, doubt, grudging respect. The debate raged on for hours. Rival factions emerged clearly. The conservatives, led by noble houses of Zayara, rejected Elias completely. They argued his presence would corrupt the throne, that only pure Zayari blood could guide the heir. The pragmatists from other species suggested testing Elias before rejecting him. Some of them clearly hoped to use him as a pawn, while others were curious about humanity's Unexpected resilience. The idealists, a smaller group, supported Serenya's right to choose. They reminded the court that Queen Solara's will was binding, and that Elias had already proven his worth in saving Serenya's life years before. From his place on the platform, Elias listened quietly. He had lived through wars and politics, enough to recognize the shifting of power. This was no longer just about him and Serenya. It was about humanity's place in the galaxy. When the session ended, Serenya and Elias left the chamber together. The corridors of crystal echoed with whispers as courtiers and guards passed them by. Some bowed slightly to Serenya, others ignored her entirely, but all watched Elias with suspicion. Once they were alone in a smaller hall, Serenya let out a long breath. For a moment, she no longer looked like the poised heir of a galactic empire. She looked like a young woman carrying a burden too heavy for her age. "You did well," Elias said quietly. Her eyes met his. "I only spoke the truth. They hate it, but I will not take back my words." "They'll use those words against you," Elias warned. "The stronger you stand beside me, the harder they will strike at us both." "I know." She straightened, her resolve returning. "But I cannot call you anything else. You are my father. No court can erase that." Elias felt something stir inside him at her words. He had lived most of his life alone, carrying out orders, protecting others only until the mission ended. But Serenya's trust was different. It was permanent, unshakable. It frightened him more than war, yet it also gave him a strength he had not known before. That night, shadows moved through the court's corridors. In a hidden chamber far from the crystal halls, rival nobles gathered in secret. Holograms of delegates flickered above a round table, their voices low and urgent. "The Queen's will has caused chaos," hissed one. "The people whisper already, some in favor of the human. If we do not act, he may gain influence. Then we must cut him away," said another, her feathers trembling with anger. "If he passes the trials, he will be bound to the throne. We cannot risk it." "And the heir?" a third voice asked. "The heir is young, too young. If she continues to defy us, she will be corrected." The conspirators spoke in careful tones, but their intent was clear. Elias and Serenya were obstacles that had to be removed. Meanwhile, Elias stood alone on the balcony of his chamber, looking over the glowing city of Ziara Prime. The spires of crystal and steel reached into the night sky, their lights shimmering like stars. He thought of Serenya's words in the court. "You are my father. No court can erase that." For a soldier who had lived without family, it was the most dangerous bond he had ever carried. But it was also the strongest. When Serenya joined him on the balcony, he turned to her. She said nothing at first, just stood beside him, her crown catching the light of the stars. Finally, she whispered, "They will try to destroy us." Elias nodded. "Then let them try. I've faced worse." She smiled faintly, though her eyes were shadowed. "I believe you." And together they watched the stars, unaware that in the shadows of the court, enemies were already moving against them. The announcement came the next morning. The herald of the court, glowing like a living shard of crystal, stood at the center of the grand chamber and let its voice echo through every hall. By the laws of Zayara and the traditions of the court, Captain Elias, Ward of Humanity, will face the trials of blood and honor. Only through these trials may he prove his right to stand as guardian to the royal heir. The chamber erupted with noise. Delegates shouted their approval or disapproval, their voices clashing in a storm. Elias stood silent on the raised platform, watching without flinching. Serenya was beside him, her jaw tight. She leaned slightly toward him and whispered, "The trials are dangerous. They were made to test our greatest warriors. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Elias replied quietly. "If I refuse, they'll call me a coward, and they'll use that as an excuse to strip you of protection." Her eyes softened, but her voice was steady. "Then be careful. They won't play fair." The trials began in the vast arena beneath the court chambers. The arena was older than the empire itself, carved into stone and crystal, its walls engraved with the names of champions who had survived before. Most of those names belonged to Zayari nobles. Few outsiders had ever stood on the arena floor. The tiers were filled with spectators, delegates, soldiers, and citizens, eager to see if the human would endure or fail. Elias stood at the center, wearing only light armor provided by the court. He had refused ornamental weapons and carried only a simple blade and a small round shield. The herald's voice rang out. The first trial, the trial of endurance. The arena floor shifted. Stone, pillars rose, each sparking with strange energy. From gates around the arena poured alien beasts, creatures bred for strength and fury. Their eyes glowed red, their hides armored with scales and bone. The crowd roared. Elias tightened his grip on the shield. He could feel the ground tremble as the beast charged. He moved with precision, dodging the first creature's strike, rolling under its claws and slashing at its side. The blade barely cut through the hide, but it slowed the beast. He used its momentum, shoving it into a pillar, where sparks of energy exploded against its body. The crowd gasped. Another beast lunged. Elias blocked with his shield, the impact rattling his arm. He pushed back, stepped aside, and let the creature smash into the first. Dust and sparks filled the air. The fight dragged on, minutes stretching into what felt like hours. His muscles burned, sweat stung his eyes, but Elias refused to fall. One by one, the beasts collapsed, until only silence filled the arena. He stood tall, blood on his arm, dust on his armor, but alive. The crowd, once eager for his defeat, now shouted in awe. The herald's voice rose again. The trial of endurance is complete. The human has not fallen. The second trial came quickly. The trial of wisdom. Elias was led into a chamber of crystal walls that reflected endless corridors. At the center sat a device of alien design, pulsing with light. Before him appeared 3 riddles, projected in alien script and translated into his tongue. Each riddle held a choice. 3 paths, only one leading to safety, the others to traps. Elias studied carefully. He had no gift for riddles, but he understood strategy. He tested the floor, the echoes, the light reflections. Slowly, methodically, he chose the right path each time. He nearly fell into one pit, its energy crackling dangerously close, but his instincts saved him. When he reached the center, the device glowed brighter. The herald announced, "The human has passed the trial of wisdom." The chamber of spectators buzzed with surprise. Few had expected a soldier to think his way through. The third and final test awaited him, the one all feared, the trial of combat. The arena floor opened once more. A figure stepped out, clad in black armor edged with silver, a Zayari champion, taller, stronger, trained from birth to fight in the arena. The crowd roared with excitement. Elias raised his blade. The champion lowered his visor and advanced. The fight began with a clash of steel. Sparks flew as their blades struck, the sound echoing like thunder through the arena. The champion was faster, his strikes powerful, his movements sharp. Elias blocked, dodged, gave ground, but never faltered. Minutes turned to a blur of motion. Elias's arm ached. His shield cracked, but his eyes never left his opponent. He remembered every battle he had fought, every soldier he had trained, every enemy who had underestimated human endurance. At last, the champion raised his blade high for a crushing strike. Elias saw the opening. He stepped aside, twisted, and slammed his shield into the champion's knee. The warrior stumbled. In that heartbeat, Elias struck with the hilt of his blade, disarming the champion and sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd gasped. Silence followed. Elias stood over the fallen champion but did not kill him. Instead, he lowered his weapon and stepped back. "I came here to protect," he said, his voice carrying through the arena. "Not to destroy." The herald's voice rang like crystal. "The trial of combat is complete. Captain Elias Ward has prevailed." The arena erupted into noise, shouts of fury, cries of respect, gasps of disbelief. Later, back in the private halls, Serenia rushed to his side. Her eyes shone with pride, though her voice trembled. "You survived all 3, she said. "Do you know what this means?" "That I'm still alive." Elias answered with a tired half-smile. She shook her head. It means they can no longer deny you. You proved yourself before the court. They wanted to break you, but instead you showed them what a human can endure. Elias sat heavily on a bench, wiping dust from his armor. This was just the beginning. They won't stop here. Serenya's face grew serious. No, they won't. Already factions plot in the shadows. They'll try other ways to remove you or me. Elias met her eyes, steady and firm. Then let them try. They'll find we don't break so easily. For the first time, Serenya allowed herself a small, genuine smile. That's exactly why my mother chose you. That night, the court echoed with arguments. Some nobles admitted grudging respect for Elias's victories. Others demanded the trials be repeated, claiming unfairness. But none could deny what the arena had witnessed. A human had endured, solved, and triumphed where many had fallen before. In the shadows, enemies whispered their next moves. The trials had not ended the conflict. They had only sharpened it. But for now, Elias had won. And Serenya was not alone. The echoes of Elias Ward's victories in the trials had not yet faded from the Galactic Court when new whispers began to spread. Some nobles now spoke of him with grudging respect, others with fear, and many with open hatred. He had proved himself in combat and wisdom, but in doing so, he had upset the balance of power that the nobles had carefully protected for generations. Elias felt it in the way alien eyes followed him through the crystalline halls. The stairs were colder, sharper, filled with quiet calculation. Serenya felt it too. She walked with her head high, but she kept her hand close to the hilt of the ceremonial blade at her waist. That evening, as they returned to their chambers, Elias spoke quietly. The trials didn't end this. They only lit the fire brighter. Serenya nodded. My mother warned me once. She said the court is not only a place of law, it is a nest of knives. Those who smile at you in the chamber may plot against you in the shadows. Elias gave a grim smile. That sounds about right. The first sign came 3 nights later. Elias woke in the middle of the night, his soldier's instinct pulling him from sleep. The room was dark, silent. Too silent. He sat up, hand reaching for the small blade he kept beside him. Then he saw it, a faint shimmer at the window. He moved fast, rolling from the bed just as a dart of glowing energy struck the pillow where his head had been. In one motion he was up, shield strapped to his arm, blade in hand. The window shattered as 2 figures cloaked in black leapt inside. Their movements were silent, almost inhuman, but Elias read them instantly. Assassins. The first swung with a curved blade. Elias blocked, sparks flying as steel struck his shield. He countered with a swift strike, forcing the attacker back. The second lunged low, but Elias kicked hard, knocking the figure sprawling. The door burst open. Serenya appeared, flanked by 2 guards. Her eyes widened at the sight, but she did not hesitate. She drew her blade, standing beside Elias. Stay. Behind me, Elias said firmly. Not this time, Serenya answered. Together they fought. The assassins moved like shadows, but Elias was faster, his years of combat guiding every step. Serenya fought with less strength, but with sharp precision. When one assassin tried to strike at her, Elias caught the blade with his shield and drove his own blade into the attacker's shoulder. The assassin fell, cloak tearing away to reveal the mark of a noble house burned into their armor. The second fled, vanishing into the night through the shattered window. Elias stood breathing hard, shield cracked, blade streaked with light. Serenya lowered her weapon, her chest heaving. They sent killers into the court itself, she said, her voice sharp with anger. Elias glanced at the fallen assassin, then at her. Not just killers, nobles' killers. Someone inside the court gave the order. The next day, the chamber was filled with uproar when news of the attack spread. Delegates shouted accusations, some demanding justice, others denying any involvement. Elias stood silently beside Serenya as she faced them all. She raised her voice above the storm. Assassins came into my chamber. They bore the mark of a noble house. This is not rumor. This is treason. The chamber quieted. All eyes turned toward a noble family seated high among the tiers, their robes, black and gold. They shifted uneasily, mandibles twitching. The Drakari delegate hissed. These are accusations without proof. Assassins can wear any mark they choose. But Serenya's voice rang clear. We caught one alive. He confessed under oath. Gasps filled the air. The noble house in question stiffened, their leader slamming his claws against the railing. Lies. A confession forced by fear cannot be trusted. Elias finally stepped forward, his deep voice carried across the chamber. I was there. I saw their mark. They came for her life. If the court ignores this, then every heir, every leader is at risk. Today it is her. Tomorrow it may be you. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. The herald raised its staff. The matter of treason will be investigated. Until then, the heir and her guardian will remain under heightened protection. But Elias knew protection would not be enough. That night, he and Serenya sat in the quiet of their chambers, the stars of Ziara Prime shining outside the windows. They won't stop, Serenya said softly. Every day they will try again. Assassins, poison, lies, anything to strip me of the throne. Elias studied her. She was young, but she spoke with the weight of someone who had already seen too much. He placed a hand over his chest. Then, we stay ahead of them, he said. We watch, we listen, and when they strike, we strike back harder. That's how you survive a war. Serenya gave a small, sad smile. And this court is a war, isn't it? The worst kind, Elias answered. The kind fought with shadows and words. But I've fought wars before. I'll fight this one too. Days passed. The investigation moved slowly, tangled in politics. Nobles denied involvement, blamed rivals, twisted words until truth was almost impossible to find. But Elias did not sit idle. He walked the halls, listened to whispers, studied faces. He spoke with guards, servants, and minor delegates, learning, more in silence than in open debate. Slowly, he uncovered threads of a greater plot. It was not just one noble house. It was many, bound together in secret. They feared Serenya's strength, feared her bond with Elias, feared what humanity's presence might mean for the galaxy. Together, they had sworn to remove her, and him. One night, Elias brought what he had learned to Serenya. They're not acting alone, he told her. This is a network, a conspiracy. If we cut down one house, the others will move. If we expose them all, the court will be forced to choose. Serenya's eyes hardened. Then we expose them. Elias nodded slowly. He admired her resolve. She was no longer just a young heir struggling to survive. She was becoming something more, a leader. The next session of the court came with tension so heavy it seemed to press on every word. Serenya stood tall, Elias at her side, as she addressed the chamber. My mother believed in truth, she said. She believed justice was the root of strength. Today I bring truth before you. There is not one traitor among us. There are many. Together they plot to tear down the throne and drag this empire into darkness. A murmur swept the chamber. Delegates shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward one another. Serenya's voice rose. I will not hide. I will not run. I will not give in to fear. I have my father beside me, and with him, I will face whatever you send. Then, before the entire court, she turned and placed her hand on Elias's arm. He is my father in spirit, and I will not stand without him. The court was stunned into silence. Elias looked out across the sea of alien faces, thousands of eyes filled with shock, fury, and disbelief. But among them, he saw something else too. Respect. The conspirators in the shadows had been revealed. The court could not ignore this war any longer, and Elias knew the real battle was about to begin. The chamber of the Galactic Court had never been so silent. Serenya's words still hung in the air, echoing in every corner. He is my father in spirit, and I will not stand without him. The nobles, the generals, the scholars, every delegate, sat frozen, as though the entire empire held its breath. For the first time in centuries, an heir had spoken so boldly, binding her future not only to her bloodline but to an outsider. A human. Elias stood beside her, his face calm, but his heart steady with battle-hardened focus. He could see the storm brewing behind those alien eyes. Some were shocked, some furious, some curious, and some, he noticed, were fearful. Fear was a weapon, and Elias knew how to use it. The herald finally struck its staff against the floor. The sound rang like thunder. The court will hear all sides. The charge of conspiracy has been spoken. Those who stand accused will answer. From the shadows, nobles rose, their robes heavy with symbols of power. The leaders of several great houses stepped forward, their faces twisted in pride and anger. One, tall and insect-like, clicked his mandibles. This is madness. An heir cannot call a human her father. The bond of throne blood cannot be mixed with alien claims. Another, scaled and regal, hissed, "The throne is not safe in her hands. She hides behind an outsider's shield while she poisons the court with lies." Serenia lifted her chin, her voice clear. "You sent assassins to kill me in my own chamber. You fear not my weakness, but my strength. You fear him, because he is proof that truth can stand even against tradition." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Elias finally stepped forward. His voice was steady, deep, carrying across the tears. "I fought in your trials. I bled in your arena. I stood against your assassins, and I am still here. Not because I am stronger than you, but because she is worth protecting. She is the heir. And no one, not poison, not daggers in the dark, not a council of liars, will take that from her while I still draw breath." The words were simple, but they struck harder than any weapon. The court erupted. Some nobles shouted in rage, others in support. The herald's staff struck again and again, trying to restore order. Finally, the noise settled into a heavy silence. The herald spoke. "This court will vote. But before the vote, the accused may answer." The conspirators stepped forward, their voices filled with venom. "You are blinded by human tricks," one cried. "This man speaks with fire, but fire burns. He is dangerous, and he is no father," another snarled. "He is a soldier from a world of death. His kind know only war." At that, Elias's lips curved into a thin smile. "You're right," he said. "Humans do know war. We know how to endure it, survive it, and win it. That's why I see through your plots. Because war taught me what cowards do when they're afraid." The word stung. The conspirators recoiled, but none dared answer. The herald raised its staff once more. "The court shall decide. Those in favor of Serenia as rightful heir, raise your seal." Slowly, one by one, glowing seals lifted into the air. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Each seal floated like a light above the chamber, a tide of support that grew stronger with each second. The conspirators watched in disbelief. Their allies faltered, some lowering their eyes, unwilling to be tied to treason. One by one, the balance shifted until the majority of the court glowed with light. "The vote is clear," the herald declared. "Serenia, daughter of the late queen, is recognized as rightful heir. Her word is law." A cheer rose, not from all, but from enough. The decision was made. But Serenia did not stop there. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "My first decree, as heir is this," she said. "Those who plotted treason will face justice, not in shadows, but in light. Their houses will stand trial, their secrets revealed, their power broken. The empire must be stronger than fear." The conspirators shouted in protest, but guards moved swiftly, surrounding them. The court watched as the once proud nobles were led away in chains. Elias stood beside Serenia, silent, but inside he felt a deep sense of pride. She had not only survived, she had risen. That night, the palace was alive with celebration. Delegates feasted, musicians played, and the people of Ziara Prime lit the skies with streaks of color. But Elias did not join the feast. He stood on a balcony overlooking the city, the stars stretching far into the black. The soldier in him was cautious. Victories were never final. Enemies always waited in the dark. Serenia joined him quietly. She wore a crown of silver, light, dancing across its surface. She looked older now, though only days had passed. "You should be inside," Elias said softly. "Tonight is for you." Serenia shook her head. "Tonight is for us." She paused, her voice gentler. "You stood beside me when no one else would. You gave me more than protection. You gave me courage. That is what a father does." Elias looked at her, and for the first time in many years his guarded expression softened. "I was never meant to be anyone's father," he admitted. "But if that's what you see in me, then I'll carry it with honor." She smiled. "Then we carry it together." In the days that followed, Serenia's rule began. She appointed new allies, strengthened bonds between houses, and moved carefully against those who still whispered in the dark. Elias remained at her side, not as a soldier under orders, but as something greater. The people began to speak his name with respect. Some called him the human guardian. Others, more daring, called him Father of the Throne. At first, Elias disliked the title. He was a man of action, not ceremony. But as time passed, he saw what it meant to Serenia. When she stood taller beneath its weight, he accepted it, because titles didn't matter to him. What mattered was simple. She was safe, she was strong, and she would not face this galaxy alone. One final time, the court gathered months later. Serenia, now crowned queen, stood before them. At her side, Elias. She raised her hand. "This empire will not be ruled by fear. It will be ruled by truth, by strength, and by unity. And for that I name Elias Ward, human of Earth, not as guardian, not as servant, but as father of this throne." The chamber erupted. Shock, anger, respect, all mixed into one roar. But no one dared defy her. Elias only bowed his head. He had faced many titles in his life: soldier, warrior, survivor. But this one, he realized, carried the greatest weight, and for the first time in years, he felt peace.